Hi everybody, it's Laura Kingen. Let's do this. I have two iPads going, so I've got a lot of different kinds of things I want to juggle today. And in this particular video, the sun is shining really brightly right on me, so I'm going to go with this. My name is Laura Kingen. I am a registered occupational therapist, nationally registered. I am also licensed by the state of Arizona to provide occupational therapy services. As a registered therapist, I am licensed to evaluate and provide treatment. I've been doing these videos since July, and I've been developing a bit of a catalog of things that I feel like is important to pass along to you all. And I've been kind of doing a little scattered around and about, but today I'd like to focus on activity analysis. And what that's about is treatment activities, treatment choices. I've been really kind of focusing on performance components. I've been on this thing lately about performance components. But that's really more about evaluating a particular individual. But today what I like to focus on is more about treatment. And as a therapist, why would I pick a particular activity? Why would I pick a particular activity for any particular individual? Everybody is different. Why would one activity be better in a certain circumstance for one person than somebody else? So that's what I want to explore today. And I feel like this is kind of putting the nutshell on about July, August, September, October, 4 months worth of videos. So I'm kind of like contemplating what I want to do henceforth in November. And I want to open it up to you all and ask for feedback. What would you like? I'm jumping way ahead, so let me take a way back step. My business card. I always like to start here. The name of my business is Sensory Solutions, Inc. I've actually been in business since 2008 with this business. The business itself, the tagline for this business is offering strategies to reach wholeness. I've been an occupational therapist. I've been a nationally registered occupational therapist for 37 years. And in this year, we've really switched to this telehealth kind of a practice. As of January of this year, I did open a clinic in Flagstaff, Arizona. I still have this clinic available to me, but now because of this COVID situation, it's kind of hard to do this clinic work. So I've switched to telehealth and trying to figure out how I can offer services to people. Things are kind of evolving. So in January, February, March of this year, at the clinic, I had offered slot car Saturdays with model trains for the idea of families to come and explore this craft hobby of slot cars and model trains, especially here in Flagstaff. You know, model trains are really a big deal. And when I was growing up, model trains and slot cars were a really big deal. Admittedly, it's a hobby of my husband's. But as a therapist, there's so many different kinds of things that we can address through playing with slot cars and model trains. And so when I refer to model trains, I'm referring to these. And when I'm referring to slot cars, I'm referring to these. Now, those of you that have been watching my videos, I do like to follow a particular structure. So this first part, I like to talk business. And then I'm going to get into the context, the bulk of what I want to cover today. And then I'm going to do calming, quiet time, self-regulation kind of an activity at the very end. It's usually, typically a little short. So much of an occupational therapist is not only working on physical skills, but is working on, we work with the whole person, and so much of that is also mental health, behavioral health, emotional health. And so the slot cars and model trains, I feel, address so many different kinds of things that it's such an appropriate therapeutic activity. I want to cover why. But I feel like I need to backstep and talk a little more about occupational therapy. Like I said, I've been in 4 months putting together a lot of different kinds of things, but I'm unsure if I've actually ever said what is occupational therapy. I know the sun is so bright in this video right now. It's like just shining so strongly. So there's like so much information I want to share with you all. There's some references online that I'm going to bring in, and some of this is going to be better than others. And I apologize, still some of this is this technology, and I still have been unable to figure out about, if I'm looking at something online, how I can reverse it so that it's you guys can read it. Still a work in progress. But there's some different websites that I would like to point out in talking a little bit about kind of the theory and context about occupational therapy. So much juggling. So I'm going to go over some of this web page information, and then I'm going to show you the track that's on my floor. There is a track on my floor. Actually, there's several tracks. And then we'll play a little bit, so that you get a sense of what I'm talking about and why. And then maybe, could this be a therapeutic activity that you might want to participate in, whether you do it with me or you do it on your own or whatever. But I want to offer this to you all. So as far as the theory of occupational therapy, I'm going to refer us to what I found online from Australia. There was another presentation that I did that I shared with you all. It was from Bangladesh. So I don't know what it is about finding these web pages from other countries, but this in particular I think is a very well done presentation, and it's a nice summary about occupational therapy. And what this is talking about is occupational performance model. I've been talking about performance components. Last time I was talking about frames of reference and putting this into context. So I want to do that a little bit more. And so this is about the occupational performance model. This is like the overall model of what we do as occupational therapists. So the term occupational performance, it's basically our ability as human beings to carry out roles, routines, tasks for the purpose of self-maintenance, productivity, leisure, rest, in response to the demands of both our internal and our external environment. Nature is so important, and I know that the sun is shining and it's kind of, the lighting is odd, but for me it's really important to have nature as a backdrop, and then with this added element of the sun coming in. I know I'm a little odd, but we've gotten so far away from nature. Nature is such a teacher, and there's so many different things that we can learn from teacher, and we're nourished through nature. So it's been important in these presentations to incorporate nature when I can. Even if I am talking about slot cars, which is more of an indoor activity, that really has very little to do with nature, but still. So basically, occupational performance is our ability as human beings to be able to work, play, and rest. And as an occupational therapist, it's our perspective that dishealth or dysfunction of health or difficulties in health is because there's some issues in our ability to carry out those performance areas effectively: work, play, rest, internal, external environments. And what are our roles involved in being able to do those kinds of things? So that's where the performance components come in. And we break these areas down. I'm going to switch over to this presentation from the performance components. This is the one from Bangladesh. The different performance components are sensory in nature, perceptual, neuromusculoskeletal, motor, cognitive, and psychosocial. So this particular website from Australia talks a little bit about these different performance components. Biomechanical. Talked about last time about the biomechanical frame of reference is really like the original, most basic kind of frame of reference that even our current mainstreamed medical model, our allopathic medical model, still tends to come from a biomechanical frame of reference. Of looking at our muscle strength, our tone, endurance, stamina. But that's still very different than our mental health arena. The biomechanical is still looking more at the physicality. And as I've alluded to before, in my 35 years, what I'm seeing is we're funneling back down into this biomechanical perspective at the expense of our mental health. And with all the mass shootings and all the anxiety and depression and the what ifs going on in this year 2020, our mental health has really suffered, and in my opinion, and our resources and our supports for mental health have deteriorated. I think in part because we have gone more towards this biomechanical approach. But as occupational therapists, we are well trained to address mental health. And as I continue to do these presentations, it seems more and more I'm getting this push for our profession to re-engage and how do I want to say? I think we're well situated as health professionals to deal with mental health issues, and we can do it with a very non-judgmental type of a perspective, and that's part of what I'm trying to address and approach with you all today. One of the things that I feel like we can address mental health through slot cars and model trains. Now, how we do that and how we go about structuring that, I'd like to think, it's some common sense, but as an occupational therapist, it's my expertise to help guide us through this kind of a modality. Anyway, let me go on. Other performance components would be like cognitive. There are people who are, back when we called it mental retardation. Now it's a cognitive disability. But there are people who have some limitations in their thinking skills. Depending on what kind of activity, there could be more cognitive requirements in an activity or less. And so as an occupational therapist, I want to match my client's needs with an appropriate activity. So I want to evaluate and look at their performance components, find out what their strengths and weaknesses are, and if I feel like I can be of support and service to that particular individual, then what kinds of activities would be an appropriate match. And so in my training as an OT, we do what's called an activity analysis, and we look at different activities, breaking them down into their very, very analytical components in matching what an activity can offer to what my client's needs are, and that kind of drives the treatment process. So other areas besides the biomechanical, the basic motor skills, is also the sensory motor. What do we hear? What are we seeing? What are we smelling? What are we tasting? What are we touching? Or what is touching us? Cognitive, and then there's the intra and interpersonal. Kind of goes along with that internal and external environment. Those differences are what's going on inside of me, the intrapersonal. You know, what's my mood? Let's see. Emotions, my self-esteem, my affect on any particular day. I think it's interesting to have rationality and defense mechanisms. These are internal processes that I would be performing in any particular task, which is different than interpersonal. And that's more that didactic experience, the socialization of when you're working with something besides yourself, something outside of yourself. Sharing, cooperation, empathy, verbal, nonverbal communication skills. These are the kinds of very specific kinds of day-to-day skills that, how do I want to say? These different kinds of skills that we use in our everyday, every type of task that we're involved with. So in this presentation from Australia, a couple more things on here that I want to point out that, again, it's a nice summary. The core elements of occupational performance: body element, mind element, and spirit element. Mind, body, spirit. Seems like we are very reticent about talking about spirit. It's something that has been really important to me, and I'll try to avoid getting on too much of a soapbox about this for right now. But I'm really glad to see that the spirit element is part of that, because I believe when we talk about mental health, there is that spirit element that is part, that's so nebulous and so kind of like, it's hard to put our finger on it, and so we just don't go there. And yet, how many of us go to church? How many of us maintain some type of spiritual practice? I mean, there's a great mystery out there of which we are a part. Something larger, something invisible, something unknown to us that affects our day-to-day performance, our day-to-day functioning. And so as occupational therapists, to be able to explore that avenue, I think is important. And that is something as an OT that I do look at, and I know we have to be careful, but it's still important when it comes to our mental health. There's our external environment, and this particular presentation breaks this down into physical, sensory, cultural, social types of environments. But then there's one other topic in here that I would like to point out, and they talk about space and time. I don't know how much I really want to say about that right now, but I have spoken about that before, and I'll speak about that again. To take into consideration space considerations and then time considerations. More linear and a more global, more left brain, more right brain kind of a perspective. Okay, so there's that. I just want to point out this particular website. I'm not going to get too into it. It's occupationaltherapyot.com. And this is like a good overall summary. Occupational therapy definition. There's some visuals on there. Talks about some of the different environments, the history. It's interesting. When did OT start? I'd forgotten this. But it was World War I. In 1917. On how we can use activities to help remediate issues. So when soldiers are coming back injured physical, psychological injuries, occupational therapy evolved to help those individuals. And I think it's still, as a discipline, it's still very applicable. So a couple of videos ago, I talked about performance components. I really like this particular page. I'm going to reference this as I continue to go on in this video today. I'm going to bounce around a little bit though. It's talking about the sensory motor, cognitive, psychosocial, psychological performance components. So what I'm going to do, keeping in mind that this is more related to a client, and when I'm looking at a client and performance components, different types of performance components involved in being a human being, which is different than activity analysis. So I've already said, I want to keep repeating, I'm evaluating a client, and then I want to match that client to an activity. To me, the art of therapy is picking an activity that incorporates as many different areas that you want to address for a client. You want to incorporate it. The art is how well you can match and how well you can address those performance components to make it a most efficient therapeutic activity for your client. So this particular website talks about activity analysis and some of the requirements of an activity. You'll see that a lot of this is that there's a lot of overlaps between performance components and activity analysis. I'm going to highlight this book. Well, you can see this book. I know it's reversed, but maybe what you can do is take a picture of it. Oh, I don't even know how to do it. Somehow figuring out a way to unreverse it. So I'm going to go slowly so you can pause it and figure out and read. And I'm sorry, one of these days I will figure this out. It's like so much data trying to manipulate these days. So I'm going to show you these things, and I'm not going to go through every single line item, but I want to give you all a sense about what I'm trying to do here. So that when we're looking at an activity, we want to see what kinds of areas are being addressed. So there's lots of different types of physical areas. See, and this is one of the reasons why I like obstacle courses, because there's so many different kinds of things you can do with obstacle courses. With the physical, there's gross motor, balance, fine motor, repetition, rhythm, coordination, strength, endurance, range of motion, posture. The list of different types of cognitive skills that could be addressed in any particular activity can look at attention, concentration, discrimination, generalization, use of symbols, cause and effect, abstract thinking. For example, for a 2-year-old, am I going to do an activity that incorporates a lot of abstract thinking? No. A 2-year-old is not going to abstract think. So, it's an inappropriate match. Reality testing, choice making, communication, language, following directions, planning, goal setting, imagination, creativity, logic, problem solving. What about psychological components? Are there activities that would elicit psychological mechanisms? What are those mechanisms? Expression of feelings, control of feelings, frustration tolerance, coping with pressure, expression of needs, gratification of needs, exploring trust, tolerating risk, independence, passiveness, active, creativity, reality testing, ego mechanisms, encouraged, moved, changed, responsibility, self-image, body awareness, sexual identity, interpersonal skills, individual, whether it's an individual or group, whether individuals can only do work on their own, maybe work on their own with a therapist, maybe work with one other person, maybe work in small groups, large groups. What are the client's needs that could best address their goals? Cooperation, competition, negotiation, compromise, leadership skills, structure, rules, isolation, role opportunities. These are the different kinds of things to, I didn't do the, did I do the cognitive? Yeah. Different considerations in the activity matches. And I've also talked about the concept of grading. We look at, in therapy, a continuum, as opposed to like on, off, black, white, right, wrong. We look at continuum, and we take an activity, slot cars. There's so many different variabilities that you can do with slot cars. It's one of the reasons why I've chosen this as one of areas to focus on as a therapist. The sensory motor and my range of motion clinics are the other. But I have a whole page designated on slot cars and my therapeutic tool. If you go on Facebook, go at car trains, and it'll pull up my page, and it'll have a lot more information, and there's videos. And I'll continue to add on there. This particular hobby available for therapeutic reasons, and why. Let me take a back step. Here's a book. What are the different performance components involved in reading a book? As opposed to, what are the different types of performance components involved in messing around on my phone? What are the different performance components involved in, say, sewing? A vast area. Now, granted, you have to assess whether or not a person is even interested in this craft or hobby. And if they're not, it's an inappropriate choice. Move on. This summer, my husband made a greenhouse for me, a small greenhouse. And as I'm spending time in there, I feel like it's an adult-sized dollhouse, a version of an adult-sized dollhouse. But as I'm watering my plants, putting the seeds in, weeding, cultivating, harvesting, it's glaring to me why it would be so helpful, I think, to use that as like an educational curriculum. From kindergartners on up to college, there's just taking that one area. There's so many different things that you can address from an academic standpoint for gardening. And I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but it's an important point I want to make. Is like with gardening, even at a kindergarten level, you can talk about colors and categorizing and doing simple kinds of things, on up to at a college level and agriculture. I'm just proposing as an occupational therapist, taking some functional activities and using that to develop our educational curriculum. I'm just throwing this out, but because it's so vast, there's so much we can cover. Same thing with music, same thing with cooking. And the reason why I'm mentioning it is because the slot cars and model trains is a hobby that covers so much that they're little children. Let's see if I can find this page. Little children. Well, I have a picture of a 4-year-old. It's going to take me too much time to do it. I won't do it now. Of a 4-year-old who can play with slot cars and trains. And I've seen older men, involved in this hobby. So it's for across the lifespan, I believe. If somebody's interested. If somebody's interested, let's explore what we can do with this. So I still want to go back to this concept of grading. Because this is such a vast, wide hobby, there's lots of different kinds of things we can do. Where's the variability come in? Well, materials and equipment. Of course, it takes money. Your environment. I remember my very first job, I was walking a neighbor's dog. They had 5 boys in their house. And in their basement, they had one room that was designated to this hobby. I thought it was amazing. It was a whole room with hills and valleys and trees and trains and fun kinds of things. It was great. It was a whole room designated to that hobby. And it just left a lasting impression for me. And now here I am. I married a man who really enjoys this hobby. And I think it's great, So the method and the related activities, I'll talk a little more about that as I wrap this up. There's so many different variabilities with that. So before I actually show you the track, I'm just thinking if there's anything else I want to share with you. I'll tell you what, I will show you this video now because it's going to be, I'm trying to figure out how to show you the visual on this with 2 iPads going. So I'm going to show you this video. Again, you can go onto my webpage and see this. How well you guys can see this. But the reason why I wanted to point this out is because this was a layout. It's not in the clearest focus, but this is a holiday layout that my husband put together. It took him hours and hours and hours. But he was happy doing it. It was work and leisure. You think about all the different motor skills involved, the space required, the equipment required, the cognitive thinking required in putting together this particular layout. Let's see if you guys can see that a little better. There's cognitive, there's psychological components involved in putting this together. You can't really tell in this image, but when you go to the webpage, you can see how he's actually made this town to look like Flagstaff. Downtown San Francisco street with buildings. I mean, the amount of creativity and thought, the planning and the organization that went into putting something like this together is really, to me, a higher end of this particular hobby. He's also incorporated, you can see here, are I'm having trouble saying this, slot car track, which is different than the train track. So here's a slot car. You can see that. On the bottom, there's actually a peg, a post, that literally fits into the track. And I am going to show you this. I'm going to run some cars on the track before I finish this video so you can see this. On how we can go from something simple to something more involved like this. It's an integral track. It's got I feel like I'm doing an ad for model trains here. There's the slot cars, and then there's the model trains. He actually has crossings, and there's sound. The railroad crossings go up and down, and there's sound, and then you can tell that there's lights. He actually has height, and then you can't really see it, but our Christmas tree is right next to it. So he has this train going down and going around the Christmas tree. I mean, there's so many different kinds of things. It's a lot of fun. And I want to show you this picture because, oops. It's the one next to it. We were cat sitting for a while. And, I mean, even the cat knew. You can see where the trains come through. Anyway, so I can spend a lot more time talking about this kind of stuff, but I think I've tried to point out performance components is part of the OT evaluation in looking at a client who's been referred for whatever disability, some problem in their independent functioning. Evaluate, say, okay, yeah, these are some different issues that this person is having some problems with. As an occupational therapist, let's put together a treatment plan and come up with some activity ideas to help this person. Especially if there are some psychological, interpersonal kinds of issues, maybe some behavioral health, mental health issues, as far as working with others in a community setting or whatever. What are some activity ideas that could help address this person? I know I've mentioned gardening. I mean, there's a reason why I've mentioned that. It's not just going off on a distraction. There's a lot of things you can do with gardening to address some mental health, social kinds of issues. But the slot cars and model trains are another. So let's move into this area. It'll take me a couple minutes to situate this. And I don't know how well I'm going to do this. So I'm going to put you guys right here. You next to you. Talk about a social experience. Okay, so this is the slot car track that is currently up. Now, my husband does change this around quite a lot. He'll change these tracks. And he can do that. I know, technology is not perfect. I'm doing the best I can for you guys. At least with the videos, you can always fast forward, right? You all. Should see the track. Okay, so I don't know if this is going to work out quite as well as I really wanted. But there is something else that I want to show you. I have several different layouts here. Coordination and balance. I've left, you know, we all are dealing with this pandemic situation, and we're all working within our homes, and we all have to work with one another. And my husband's a drummer, you know, neither one of us we both have lots of stuff. So, but we have to learn to work with one another, you know, and we do the best we can. And I know that sometimes it can get trying, and our patients can get tested, especially while we're stuck at home. This is another reason why I want to offer these slot cars just as a variety. It's frustrating today, being home, stuck at home. But we need to do the best we can. And we need to be patient with one another. These slot cars, in talking with my husband, in lieu of making these available for you all to come to our clinic, we are making these available to you all. We're talking about having preset layouts, but I guess I like to have too much variety, offering too much variety. So what I'm trying to say here is my husband is making these tracks available for rent, especially over the holidays, so that instead of coming to the clinic, you can have these in your home, say for a couple hours or a day, even a week, so that you get to play with these on your own as well. Now, there's one other track I want to show you, but I think for purposes of logistics and video, I'm going to bring this to you. This is a track my husband made that's portable. Clearly, this is not well rehearsed. And I will wrap this up here pretty soon. I want to show you. Can you see? There, that works. Now for you all, at some point. So this is the other track. Now, you see that red button on the bottom? That is a switch mechanism. It's a switch button. So that for people who have fine motor difficulties, can use the big red switch. Well, you know, sometimes best laid plans, right? So I'm going to show you this track as I finish talking. Let me rephrase that. I'm going to show you this. Can you guys see this? No, you probably can't. Well, it's the best I can do for today. So we have these buttons. See this? So you press the button down, and we have these cars, and they go around the track. I did a video about hand grasps. What grasp am I using? I know there's some occupational therapists and occupational therapy students that have been tuning into the videos, so this is for you. especially. What grasp is this that I need to use? I'm pressing the button down. What muscles is helping me to move my thumb up and down? So there's the flexor pollicis brevis and the extensor pollicis brevis, because what my thumb is doing is extending and flexing. My hand is holding a cylinder. So this is a cylindrical grasp. And so I have to hold on, and my thumb is doing the action. So this can work on hand strength if that's the particular area that I want to work on. If I don't have that much fine motor coordination, and I want to play with this track and this hobby, I can press this button. I mean, that really, it's just, there's no hand grasp, really, it's just using the hand and the arm. I'm going to mention, no, I won't. I think of one client in particular who loves that tap, and it really hopes you can do it well. So, I mean, I'm almost an hour into this, and I could keep talking, and I know I've kind of scattered around a little bit. But I think that's kind of, I think I want to stop. I think I'm going to stop. So, we are making this available for rent in home. There is a clinic we can do this in. If you're interested, let me know. You can check out Facebook at Slot Car Trains. PM me for more information. I mentioned how I wanted to do some kind of self-regulatory type of exercise before I finished, which is always important. And part of the reason why I'm emphasizing that is because I do that in my sessions. Not necessarily my slot car sessions, but in a lot of my other therapy sessions. So I think let's just keep it simple. Just get in a comfortable position and let's just do a couple of deep breaths. Take it. So get in a comfortable position. You can keep your eyes open or closed. We'll take in 3 slow deep breaths. Keeping in mind it's important to keep your mouth closed. And when you exhale, exhale slowly. Taking a deep breath. Slowly let it go. I'm going to do this again, and this time I'm going to count. I'm going to count 3 to, taking a deep breath in, I'm going to count to 3, and in the exhale, I'm going to count to 4. So breathe in, 1, 2, 3, and then exhale, count 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do it one more time. Deep breath in, 1, 2, 3, and then exhale to the count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Slowly open your eyes. It's a lot of information today. I am available for evaluation, treatment, individual and group. Check me out on Facebook. Thank you all. Take good care.